Small increase was observed in new mortgage issuances. Change of residential property transactions in Tbilisi remains on the positive territory.
Total non-cash spending by residents maintains stable annual growth with a marginal increase in the fourth week of June.
Non-cash expenditures by non-residents maintain positive dynamics, posting a significant improvement in the fourth week of June.
Growth of non-cash spending on hotels through TBC Bank channels on the positive territory, while showing a sizable increase for restaurants and cafes.
Change of non-cash spending on apparel and accessories and fitness posting a significant improvement. Non-cash spending on entertainment remains on negative growth territory.
A noticeable increase was observed in non-cash spending on categories of construction materials and electronics.
Non-cash spending on personal care doubled in the fourth week of June, while a solid growth was observed for non-cash spending on other consumer goods.
Growth remains significant for non-cash spending on doctor visits and medical equipment.
This is The Checkpoints, hosted and co-authored by Elena Kanchilashvili and myself. I'm Georgi Sakadze. It is Sunday and we have gathered in Forbes Georgia studio here on Gamrakeli to tell you more on business and economics.
10 p.m. sharp, and let me start with a great day that is today. That's 4th of July, Independence Day of the United States of America, and my second home practically. In my teenage years, I used to live and study in Boone, North Carolina, and even wrote a book that has been awarded a presidential grant in Georgia and received a thank you note personally from then President Bill Clinton. So this day really means a lot to me.
And it means a lot to this country as well, since the US is a main strategic partner of this country, supporting us through many years, and we have one to showcase today. This support comes from the World Bank. How can Georgia achieve green, resilient and inclusive growth amidst a post-pandemic recovery? And how can the World Bank help? Anna Bierde, World Bank Vice President for Europe and Central Asia, shares her views on these questions and more during her first official visit to Georgia in May.
It's great to be back in Georgia again. I was last here in 2015. So much has happened since, but probably one of the most memorable will be the last year, which was a challenging year for the world and also for Georgia. Georgia, as a service economy dependent on tourism, was one of the hardest hit countries. I'm very proud that the World Bank was so quick to respond. Georgia was one of the first recipients of our emergency COVID support package. It comprised both medical support for emergency medical equipment, PCR testing, oxygen concentrators, and other medical equipment. Over 600,000 individuals and families have benefited from the social support under our emergency response. We also provided support to help firms during this difficult time. Over 6,000 micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises will benefit from support. This also comes on top of support that we provided to the general budget against reforms that Georgia has taken in the past, as well as a project that's one of my favorites, which is called Login Georgia, where over 500,000 people in 1,000 villages across Georgia will benefit from greater connectivity and digital services. What's very important as we look forward for a strong recovery for Georgia are three things. Continuing with structural reforms. And here I would like to highlight the reforms the government is discussing around the SOEs, state-owned enterprises, but also broader public administrative reforms. Secondly, paying very close attention to environment and climate change. Cost of the environmental degradation is about 6% of GDP. This is very significant and causes both health concerns for the population of Georgia and of course impacts the pristine environment that we want Georgia to have for its tourism. And thirdly, we need to make sure that we focus strongly on the opportunities that digital can provide. We see a lot of opportunities to enhance the government services, but also a greater role by the private sector by laying the foundations for digital. Login Georgia provides a great starting point, but I think we can continue to support to get a more dynamic private sector to help in the recovery for all of Georgians.
Georgi, here are the rapid estimates of Georgia's economic growth, definitely featuring some recovery. Estimated real GDP growth rate in May 2021 amounted to 25.8% year-on-year and 11.5% in January-May of 2021 year-on-year.
Significant contributions to real GDP growth were observed in the following activities: manufacturing, financial and insurance activities, trade, real estate activities, hotels and restaurants contribution, construction, transportation and storage.
Yes, after the checkpoints ends, we will have the opportunity to listen to Mr. Dimitar Bogov, chief economist of EBRD. He explains why this financial institution forecasts 4.5% growth in 2021 for Georgia, while both the World Bank and the government have higher outlooks and expectations, 6%, and as stated in Forbes Week interview with Georgia's finance minister this morning, 7.7% by the Georgia's government subsequently.
Meanwhile, inflation hits a record high. In June 2021, the consumer price index increased by 0.7% compared to the previous month, while the annual inflation rate amounted to 0.9%. With regard to the annual core inflation, the prices increased by 5.9%, while the annual core inflation without tobacco amounted to 5.8%.
Yes, Georgi, if we look at the annual trend, we will clearly see that all groups except for clothing and footwear and communication posted an increase in prices, with transport and health being leaders in this direction. Prices on food and non-alcoholic beverages have increased by 8.8% year-on-year, and this is a big deal for a country like Georgia, where food has a high share in the overall consumer basket.
Mentioning food and mentioning non-alcoholic beverages, let us turn to our industrial reviews, Elena, and I think it's time already. And for today, our focus in the checkpoints is on juice production companies in Georgia.
Exports of fruit and vegetable juices in 2020 increased by 44% compared to 2019. In particular, in 2020, exports amounted to approximately $10.5 million, and in 2019, it amounted to approximately $7.3 million. The list of fruit and vegetable juice exporting countries in 2020 looks like this: Germany, United States, Russia, Australia, and Japan. As for companies' sales revenue, from Georgian producers, the revenue of the brand Kula in 2019 amounted to 10,439,000 lari. In terms of imports, one of the leaders, Wimbledon Georgia's revenue in 2019 amounted to 19,846,000 lari. In the Georgian market, Wimbledon represents Sandora and Sadachok juices, as well as Lipton iced tea brand. The increase in export figures also proves that 2020 has not been so tricky for juice companies compared to other businesses. However, reorganizing business plans has become necessary for them too. No complaints about last year, though next year's expectations are much more hopeful and focused on revenue growth. GSC Healthy Water, a producer of Austrian Rauch juice, which imports raw materials from Austria, notes that 2020 was full of challenges, driven by several important factors. Due to various factors, the decline in the HoReCa sector reduced the company's sales by 10 to 20% in the first half of last year. However, the situation got more balanced by expanding product assortments in the second half of 2020. Due to the global problems, the company, which is dependent on raw materials from imports, also had to adjust its prices. Due to tense global processes, the difficulties that came with the year 2020 affected the Rauch brand too. For example, depreciation of the lari or an increase in oil prices, or restrictions that have led to the closure of markets that are important to us. Of course, these factors also impacted Rauch's sales as well as the prices we offered our customers. Kula was founded in 2009. To this day, the company supplies various products in addition to juices and has an enterprise in Gori. For Kula, last year proved to be quite successful in exports. Sales growth reached 40%, which the company's founder explains by the excellent fruit yield in 2020 and the demand from export markets. A 17% increase in sales was also observed in the local market. However, despite the positive dynamics, the company still plans to increase prices from September due to the complicated business environment.
Corona happened and Georgian lari depreciated. Companies could not import due to several reasons. Firstly, it was difficult to transport and import the product. Secondly, because Georgian lari depreciated, import-related costs increased. We are local producers and therefore we had some advantages. Utility bills, salaries, fruit bills and all the other expenses were in Georgian lari. Therefore, it was easier for us to compensate for the previous year. We are able to maintain growth and production dynamics.
A startup company, Alali, established in 2019, had a different pandemic experience. The company highlights the difficulties caused by the almost disappearance of the entire HoReCa sector and notes that the company has been affected terribly. Despite the problems, new export markets, apart from the United States, were still found in Kazakhstan, Ukraine, and Iraq. Despite rising prices for essential raw materials, their pricing policy remains unchanged at this stage. However, a 30% increase is planned for the end of the year.
We did not have a decline in the local market, but we did not have any progress or development either. Whatever quantity we sold, we remained at the same quantity by the end of the year. As for exports, there was interest from several countries. Unlike the domestic market, export allowed for more growth. We were not represented in these countries at all, so our product first entered the retail markets of these countries.
Companies have positive expectations for the future. They plan to process more food in 2021 than they had in previous years. At the same time, the HoReCa sector and tourism are expected to recover, which will bring them additional profits. Companies don't hesitate to say that they have gotten used to the current situation and have successfully adapted to the given reality.
Well, Georgi, let's zoom in a little bit on blackberries for a short while. The thing is that only a few blackberry producers in Georgia use the opportunity to sell early berry varieties at a relatively high price. Farmers admit that early blackberries are quite attractive in terms of profitability. However, this year, hail and drought almost destroyed the crop. So what happens to exports? The Checkpoints has the answer.
Blackberry season starts in Georgia in a few weeks, but early varieties are already available on the market. According to EastFruit, at this moment demand is high and supply lags behind. So the prices are high for now, but in the peak season in July, supply will increase rapidly and prices will fall. Only a few producers in Georgia are using the opportunity to sell early blackberries at a higher price, and Izolda Kitesashvili is among them. She started the blackberry harvest in May as she produces blackberries in the greenhouse and also has early varieties in the open field too.
We have already received the first harvest this year at the end of May. The next step is to harvest the berries from mid-June. The price of 1 kilogram of early berries was 20 lari, then 15 lari. We used to sell blackberries for 15 lari, but we suffered a significant loss due to hail. In general, early blackberries are quite a profitable variety. Each grain weighs about 15 to 20 grams and is in demand.
Other farmers admit that early varieties are attractive in terms of profitability. There are too many varieties of blackberries grown in Georgian orchards, Triple Crown and Chester. However, this year, hail and drought practically destroyed the crop. Farmers have a hard time naming the exact amount of healthy blackberries. The result is that spoiled berries can either not be exported at all or in very small quantities.
The drought and hail factor is quite visible. Even a weak hail in Kakheti easily damages the fruit. If at least one small part of the fruit is damaged, it already spoils the rest and destroys the quality completely, negatively affecting exports.
At the same time, a faulty reclamation system creates a problem in the Kakheti region. Due to improper irrigation conditions, along with the early varieties of blackberries, the crop that should be harvested at the end of July is also damaged.
Any plant, including blackberries, needs its first breeding by the end of March. That is, once a month, the early and ordinary varieties of blackberries must be watered. Watering every other day is also necessary during the heat in June. The problem is that 90% of the population in Kakheti region has an irrigation problem. If we have to start picking berries, there is still no reclamation of irrigation water in the canal at that time.
Over the years, the demand for Georgian blackberries is growing from different countries. Izolda Kitesashvili, head of the Berry Producers Association, said that several Asian markets have recently become interested in Georgian blackberries.
As for the Asian market, we are now researching the market. We have already sent a test batch of raspberries. Let's see how the negotiations will be sorted out. We are ready. We have all the necessary equipment, including a refrigerator, a pre-cooling chamber, with the help of which we can deliver berries to any country. It must be said that blackberries are still mostly demanded in the Russian market.
So, the demand for blackberries is high, however, the supply is still short of this demand. The reasons vary, however, it seems that the export of large quantities of blackberries is mainly hindered by reclamation problems, drought, and hail.
Georgi, we have talked about the traditional businesses that have their share in growing the economy, but you talked to a very specific business the other day. Please tell us more on that.
Yeah, you're absolutely and totally right, Elena. I talked with Lasha Machavariani, founder and CEO of Sports Media Holding. That's positioning itself, well, I must say, on the global iGaming market.
Very well then, here's the interview with Lasha Machavariani. Take a look and decide for yourselves.
Lasha, before updating about the news regarding Sports Media Holding, let's brief our viewers and followers about the company itself, because by the end of the day, nobody knows that it's not Georgian entity at all, working abroad, operating abroad. So what is Sports Media Holding doing?
Georgi, first of all, thank you for having me here.
Pleasure is mine hosting you.
Thank you, and I hope that our discussion will be interesting for our audience. Yes, regarding Sports Media Holding, that was originally founded in Georgia about 5 years ago. So initially our plan, and actually my plan, was to make the company that wouldn't be oriented only on one country into iGaming industry, but the company to have the ability to scale up and to become the global company. So that's why our initial approach and the mission statement was based on that main factor, and so how we built the company and what kind of the activities we were making, it was driving the company to be global. Also, so this company is now mainly oriented into the iGaming and to the sports media businesses, but it first started into the iGaming, but we do not want it also to be into the iGaming from providing one service or two services. We wanted to have the wide variety of services offering to the iGaming operators, platform providers, and all the stakeholders that were involved into the iGaming globally. But globally we also need to be careful and to go step by step. That's why we first chose the region which we know very well. So this is the CIS region. Yes, and for the auditorium it will be clear. So CIS, technically this is the former Soviet Union excluding Baltics, Georgia and Ukraine. But for our Western partners and into the business language, CIS is used as the former Soviet Union,
Soviet Union,
and the very Eastern European countries,
correct.
like for example Bulgaria, Poland, etc. etc. So
a bit,
up to
a bit broader geography.
Yes, so it's technically it's Eastern Europe and Central Asia, so which is about 25 countries. So we wanted to do so, and that's why the initial steps that we took were just detailed research of all the territories, how the gambling and how the iGaming industry was structured there, what business models were used, what was the legal and compliance direction there, what was the sponsorship marketing directions there, what was the main strategies, what were the main strategies for the main players onto the market, the products, and you know, all these things, and to analyze this and to have it place and to start building up the relationships with different stakeholders in this industry.
In this regards, my first question, actually already the second one, is about SBC Gaming. Okay. Was that your personal, I cannot say a plan coming from your action plan related to your company, but SBC Gaming, you are exclusive representative, and your exclusivity representative covers not only CIS countries, it's also Eastern Europe, as I know, and also Middle Asia.
Yes, exactly.
Which is a bit broader geography, what we mentioned
Yes,
already.
exactly. Yeah? So as we stepped in at the Sports Media Holding about 5 years ago in building up these relationships, these big networks with the many stakeholders onto the global level, so SBC is one of the largest gaming, B2B gaming and media organizations worldwide. So we just were onto the spot, and we started establishing very strategic and partnership relationships from the very beginning. I personally became the ambassador, global ambassador of the SBC brand.
Ah, you were the brand ambassador of
yes,
SBC.
from the 2017.
Which means that the cooperation was quite...
Yes, and we started building the very strategic...
From the beginning, yeah.
From the beginning. When the pandemic hit in 2020, so you remember, and SBC is just a few words regarding SBC.
Yeah, we need so.
Yes, so SBC covers different business directions. So SBC is one of the largest news provider into the iGaming industry. So it has its online news website. So SBC is in the sector of the, in many sectors regarding summits, networking, so it
events,
is conferences, yes, in London, in New
Mm-hmm.
Jersey, in Malta, so it's got up to 10 events on the yearly basis. It's got the award ceremony, which is one of the most respected into iGaming industry. Yes, award ceremony, which is
held and organized by
SBC. It's called SBC Awards. It's taking place every December in London, and so it's really huge event. It's got its own esports direction, esports insider. It's got also some different directions in casino, like the Casino Bit. So it's very complex and very huge business organization.
While being in a preparation meeting with you, I got the news about the future conference in Kiev.
Yes.
Am I right? What kind of conference? You are talking about the world or different?
So this is this will be the summit, SBCCI summit, and just to go there, I'll just brief you how we came there.
Please.
Yes, okay, so when the pandemic hit in 2020, SBC's, I don't know, 90% of the business was offline. But it was the great challenge because everybody needed to somehow focus into the digital. And SBC already had planned its, 5 events in London, Malta, New Jersey, etc. It had to cancel everything and to very rapidly go into the digital business, which it doesn't have the experience to organize digital events at that time. So it was very successful. In 2020 April, SBC offered the first digital and the largest digital summit worldwide into the iGaming. And then came up the idea to make this similar event concentrated onto the CIS market.
And especially
for this market. And we were chosen as the partners and the co-organizers together with SBC.
Your company?
Our company, Sports Media Holding. Wow. And we held the largest digital summit into the CIS and Eastern Europe in October 2020. That had huge success. So after that, During the pandemic, yes. So we need to adopt very quickly, and it was very successful, very challenging at the same time. And after that, we started already with SBC discussing deeper partnership. And we came to the idea that let's do the business vertical, separate business vertical, SBC CIS business vertical. That would include all the directions that we spoke globally into the CIS region. One of the parts is the summit, of course, and we've decided to have the largest offline summit, which will be held in Kiev with more than 1,000 delegates, with top-class speakers, with great networking opportunities, and with also exhibition opportunities. It will have also the exhibition center for the stakeholders that will be purely concentrated onto CIS and what's going on in CIS. Now, why CIS so important? Because take into consideration, for example, Georgia, which is a little country, and we do have the recent cases like 3 worldwide giants like Paddy Power Betfair, Betsson Group, and GVC are in the 3.5 million population country with the huge M&As that they have conducted.
Indeed.
Kiev now became the regulated market. The parliament have already declared the regulation into the gambling, and lots of Western companies are going there because, Ukraine, because it's huge market. Uzbekistan will be now regulated as well for the first time, 35 million population country. Russia with its 150 million, and when they held the World Cup in 2018.
It explains everything.
Yes, so Here we have Armenia, which is very high-tech and very iGaming driven, huge market
I didn't
as
know
well.
that.
Yes, so they do have
Wow.
couple. Also, Ajarabet is
Part of it.
presented, in Armenia. So these markets are creating a huge buzz worldwide, and that's why there is a great attention from the worldwide giants in entering this market, understanding these markets, and so this is the main reason why we
But
went
at
in
the
this
same
direction.
time, your opinion is very much requested and interesting in regards of Georgia. What do I mean by this? What is benefits for Georgia in this regards? I'm talking about your representation, I'm talking about SBC and other involvements. What can Georgian local markets receive? You mentioned about the already presented giants on
Yes.
these markets.
I'll tell you for the Georgian companies, for example, because also one of the services that we've started Sports Media Holding during this year's providing to the gaming operators, that was the IT services, which is very much needed because the market is technology driven, online gaming. So we are also quite well presented there. And
You're talking about IT services directly related to iGaming or in general? Just
iGaming. I mean
iGaming.
iGaming because they need
Which
the
is very
platform.
specific, yeah?
Yeah, but there is a platform development, different service development. They need software development. They need to outsource some kind because nobody.
Which is
has-
crucially important.
Yes, crucially important, and which there is, I would say, quite good margins because this is the industry where there are good margins, and you know, everybody can benefit there, which can provide good services there. So what we mean that it will be also very interesting, and especially this summit, which will be held in Kiev, is that in Georgia there are many companies that do provide IT services, and they are searching for the markets or the customers,
Opportunities,
yeah, who will have good pay per hour rate, for example, much higher than is in Georgia because it's lower and they need to search this. They do have the resources for supply, but they do not know where to find the demand. There are also many advertisement companies in Georgia, like we know, that do serve the different gambling organizations in Georgia.
When this
yeah?
conference is going to be held?
This
Pastor?
conference is going to be on 13th and 14th October in Kiev, and there will be, as I said,
Huge opportunities.
yes, huge opportunities to find the business demand there. They do have the supply, and so I do hardly recommend everybody to participate as exhibitors, or they might come as the delegates, because we will provide the great opportunity for the networking. And the most important thing in this industry, probably in all the industries, this networking, this acquiring new connections in order to understand what kind of the new demand is coming and where the supply can be matched.
I want to brief our viewers and followers in regards of your company more. Brief us about your portfolio, I mean about your partners existing, and at the same time, worth to mention about the agreement you signed officially at the beginning of this year, correct?
Yes, so actually in 2021 we became the official partners of SBC Gaming, and actually all the B2B activities that our company Sports Media Holding was covering, so we've stopped it and we allocated all the resources into the B2B direction for the SBCCI's sake, yeah, in order to do not, you know, mess up, and in order to have all the appropriate and available resources at place in order to have the best quality. So SBC is our strategic and very long-term partner into the B2B direction. The Setanta Sports. Setanta Sports is the huge brand. It was founded in 1990 in Dublin, Ireland. It has operated in every continent except Latin America very successfully. It is very well known worldwide and very well respected, and it was our very strategic partner in Central Asia and Eastern Europe region as well. But recently what we did and what we initiated and what we mediated, actually, we mediated the very interesting and very strategic important M&A project between Setanta Sports and between Ajara Sport, Georgian media company, newly launched. It doesn't have the history. It has the history of about 10 years in being the sports media, but not the sports broadcaster, because it started sport broadcasting about 2 years ago.
So they didn't have such profile at all.
They didn't have. And I'll explain also one niche of the direction of Sports Media Holding. So we are identifying what need might exist onto the market, what demand and what supply might be relevant to this need. Because At that time, Agera Sport was not thinking of acquiring the Setanta Sports
profile
Eurasian
was totally different.
yes, operations, and at the same time, Setanta Sports was not thinking of giving away their brand in 13 countries to the Georgian operator. But we understood the need of Agera Sport, we understood the need of Setanta Sports, and we mediated this deal. This was a very intensive, very interesting M&A project. About 8 months it was continuing, and finally it ended up that Agera Sport acquired Eurasian part of the Setanta Sports business, 13 countries, excluding Russia and Ukraine, all former countries. They do have the Setanta Sports brand, and I'm really very happy. Setanta Ireland office is really very happy that their brand now is represented by Agera Sport. That is great company. Really, I use the occasion. My compliments to the management of this team. They're really great. They are, I would say, very ambitious, very innovative, and they will operate it very successfully.
Sounds great. Good luck to Sports Media Holding, and it was my pleasure hosting you in Forbes, Georgia office for the Checkpoints.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
And so this is all for today, I guess, but you should not go anywhere. EBRD will analyze Georgia's economic forecast and more right after we say goodbye for now.
And the time is now. Follow us on bm.g and forbes.g, and see you on Sunday. GDP for Georgia is expected to grow by 4.5% in 2021 and then by 5.5% in 2022. The main driver of the overall economy for EBRD is still a revival of the hospitality sector, while major risks stem from the low pace of vaccination still in Georgia. Please elaborate a little bit more on this.
Well, we already see recovery in the Georgian economy from the second quarter of this year, and we expect this to continue during the year and also to have some impact in the next year. We see hospitality sector as very important for Georgia, having in mind the significant share it has in the economy, and we think the pace of recovery could be shaped by the hospitality sector and how fast it will return to the previous path. On the other side, we see still significant risks, not just in Georgia, but in general for the region of Eastern Europe and Caucasus, because of the slow rate of vaccination. This is of significant importance, having in mind that COVID is still not eliminated, and we already see in many countries of Europe the new Delta variant, which if spreads to this region, we could see in the autumn a new wave of COVID, which would have negative implications on economic growth and recovery. Usually the high level of people with COVID disease leads to partial or full lockdowns, closures of many parts of the economy, especially the service one, and this certainly would disrupt the recovery.
Can we say that for the economies in Eastern Europe and South Caucasus, more broadly, the main downside risk, so to say, is the low pace of vaccination? Because when we look at other regions, we see that the growth prospects are the lowest for this region.
Yes, low level of vaccination is a significant risk factor for the recovery stage. However, when we are talking about the forecast and when we compare with other regions, as you mentioned, it's visible that in our region we have, let's say, figures that are a bit weaker than for other countries and regions. There are basically two factors about it. The first factor is that the three largest economy in this region, which are Ukraine, Belarus, and Azerbaijan, they all face significant structural impediments that were present even before the pandemic, And because of that, they have quite moderate growth rates. Even before the pandemic, their growth rates were between 1% and 3%, not higher than that. And these three economies certainly drive the average growth rate of the region. On the other side, the second reason, which is quite important and affects some of smaller economies in this region, is what happened last year and beginning of this year. Last year we had a war between two of these countries. Then we had political volatility in some others like Armenia, Georgia, Moldova. Fortunately, in Georgia, we see this is behind us, and we hope that after elections in Armenia, political situation will settle and will not disturb the economic growth further.
The picture is much broader than just economy, right? When we're talking about the hospitality sector in Georgia and its big share in GDP growth, but on the other hand, we see that the main risk, not only for Georgia, but for this region, for the immediate region, for Georgia, is low pace of vaccination. What is EBRD's take on the current decision of Georgian government to open, for example, the land borders?
Well, it's quite a difficult decision to take. And I don't envy the government that has to take such decision, because here they have to weigh between the health issues and economic issues. And I believe they do the right decision. Opening of the economy and opening of the tourism, which is probably the most important sector for Georgian economy, is necessary.
I'm asking this question because looking at other countries whose regulations have become exemplary for Georgia as well, they have been quite cautious about lifting these regulations. Most of them, they didn't lift these regulations until I don't know, for example, Israel, US, many other countries, many countries in Europe, after reaching certain point of vaccinated population.
Certainly with appropriate health precautionary measures, it's possible to open tourism for guests from abroad with request of appropriate certificates that people who arrive are vaccinated, or with tests taken that they are not bearing the COVID virus. Tourism will certainly not recover fully to the pre-pandemic levels. It will take a few years to come to that point. However, the other sectors will contribute significantly to this recovery. However, we still don't think that recovery could be very strong. 4.5% is, I would say, moderate for Georgia, but at this point of time, we think this is realistic.
Let me tell you some recent statistics for Georgia's economic growth that have been published by Geostat. Estimated real gross domestic product growth rate in May 2021, it was 25.8% year on year and 11.5% in January, May of 2021 year on year. Government says that these numbers give the solid ground for Georgia to have two-digit economic growth in 2021. Given what we have analyzed so far, do you think that's realistic?
Yes, these figures that you mentioned and that we have seen are quite impressive and show that obviously economic activity is getting speed. However, we still don't have much details about about the drivers of this growth, because these are first estimates that are based on some indirect indicators. It would be important to see in which sectors is created this growth, which are the drivers, in order to get to a more pronounced conclusion about the outcome for this year. And certainly second quarter of the year is something, the high growth rate in the second quarter of this year was expected because of the fact that last year the second quarter was the
baseline
point in the contraction. So the baseline works here. But we expect in the third and fourth quarter these growth rates to moderate significantly. However, as I will mention again, uncertainty is very high, and I would be curious to look at first data about the drivers of this growth and which sectors are actually leading this recovery.
This report makes focus on high inflation and high inflation, which is also followed by the tightened monetary policy in Georgia. What is the impact of this approach to the economic growth? Because we hear sometimes conflicting analysis of this policy that NBG is maintaining. What is EBRD's take on that?
Inflation is something that should be watched closely in this period. We see first that there are some temporary impact on prices, and these are connected to base effect. As you mentioned previously, base effect plays a role not just in the growth, but also in the inflation. Last year, at this period of time, prices were quite depressed, and now in the recovery, obviously, there is some growth compared to that period. Another factor that is important and that influence higher inflation at the moment are rising commodity prices, especially of the basic food products. And this is causing some troubles in countries where food is having a higher share in the consumer basket. However, these are effects that usually economists say are transitory, so they will expire at the end of the year. We should also look quite cautiously on some other factors like supply constraints. We have to bear in mind demand factors. On global level, it's estimated that fiscal stimulus accounted to about 20% of global GDP. This is a significant amount. Okay, it was necessary in this period to smooth the recession in the world, but this could be winded down gradually because it will have impact on the inflation. I believe this is also something that NBG is analyzing, and we have full confidence in the professionalism of NBG. We are confident that they are doing the right thing and they will succeed to keep inflation under control.
Great that you mentioned the fiscal stimulus and subsidies. We heard about the contours, so to say, of 10-year plan that was presented by the Prime Minister of Georgia. And there still we see that a lot of types of subsidies are there in this plan. My question is simple: can the economy that is largely dependent on subsidies and debt be sustainable in the long run?
Your observation is quite good. Obviously, as economies are developing, they should be less dependent on external financing. And to achieve that level, it is necessary to create domestic productive potential and increase exports. Georgia still has a significant current account deficit in balance of payment, and the only way to reduce this is to increase export capacities. The example that Georgia achieved and success that it achieved in tourism is now bringing around 20% of GDP inflow of foreign currency, should be followed by some other sectors. Georgia could develop some other export services sectors. IT is one potential, and also manufacturing. Georgia still lacks in export of manufacturing products. There are opportunities, especially after the pandemic. We see that the European Union is now talking and starting to do something in moving the global supply chains closer to Europe. This could be a chance, not just for Georgia, but for many countries in the EU neighborhood.
What about FDI? Where does FDI fit in this picture that you already that you are just referring to? Because FDI for Georgia means not only investment, but also it means know-how, it means skills, it means a lot of like added value that FDI could bring to the country. And you know that the Prime Minister recently appointed Mr. Hudak, Basil Hudak, as his advisor on attracting FDI. Basil Hudak was EIB's former vice president of EIB. Should attracting FDI be a distinctive, so to say, goal of the government going forward?
Definitely it should, exactly for the reasons that you mentioned in your question. FDIs are not bringing just foreign capital, which is necessary at this period to cover the high external deficits, but also it brings know-how, it brings different work ethics, it brings contemporary work standards, and all this could contribute to Georgian economy. These FDIs, as I mentioned also in the previous question, should focus to significant extent to attracting new producers in the manufacturing sector, to enter into this trend of moving the global supply chains closer to Europe. And also it's very important, these FDIs, to be connected more to domestic economy. So some activities has to be taken in the direction of creating a good environment, ecosystem of foreign companies to satisfy their needs by supplying on domestic companies as much as it is possible. This will contribute also to the development of domestic enterprises and domestic industry.
Sir, now listening to you and thinking of what is the new agenda of not only of EBRD but the whole IFI community looking into the post-pandemic world, and that is like green growth, inclusive growth, more sustainable development, right? These are the new goals that are on the table for the world, as identified by IFIs. On the other hand, we know what are some of the major challenges for Georgia's economy, and that's court system, that's education system, all of that. Do you think this focus of the new agenda for the post-pandemic world is relevant for Georgia's current challenges?
Definitely it is. We know that Georgia features quite well compared with the region in terms of governance, in terms of efficiency of judiciary, anti-corruption, and all these areas. But if we compare Georgia with more advanced transition economies, those who are already members of European Union, Georgia is lagging behind. And this should be the target of Georgia, to improve its internal environment on the level that has Poland, Czech Republic, Baltics, and then to become more attractive for foreign investors. Actually, that would create a good environment, good investment climate, and could be crucial for attracting the multinationals in this global shift of supply chains. Green energy is something that could be significant advantage for Georgia. We know that it dominates Georgian production of electricity. More efforts in this direction, especially in solar and wind, could make Georgia more competitive, having in mind that EU is already thinking about introducing some import tariffs based on the compliance with carbon dioxide emissions. Green and digital agenda are something that is very important going forward. The focus will be there. Digital proved to be a crucial element in such circumstances as we lived through in the previous year. And renewables is something that is already here, and the future is there.